Welcome to State of Ed, a podcast about education inside the classroom and out. My name is Marc Isix.
And I'm Nick Simone.
How you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing well. How's your vacation going so far?
It's going pretty well. Weather looks like it's starting to come around. I think spring is finally in the air, which has been a long time coming. So I'm looking forward to getting outside and not having to be wearing a lot of heavy clothing. That would be nice. How about you?
Doing well. A lot of schoolwork, getting ready for AP exams, but no complaints.
All right, very good. So today we're going to start part one of a series that we're going to call From Surviving to Thriving, a Roadmap to Mastery. And it's going to be a series of short mini episodes, maybe 10 to 15 minutes long, covering a range of topics that will pertain to predominantly new teachers, but a lot of these things will definitely have some relevance to teachers of any level of expertise and experience. And the first one that we're going to do is basically all around getting hired and getting that first teaching job. So some of these are nuts and bolts, and some of these are just our opinions and thoughts on the subject. But the first thing that I would recommend to anybody who is looking to get into the field is make sure that your licensing is taken care of. Now, I won't spend any time focusing on New York's rules and regulations because we do have listeners from across the country. So each state has its own rules and regs, but you definitely want to know them, and you definitely want to take care of all your paperwork ahead of time, because that can be an albatross around your neck that can haunt you and plague you for many, many years during your career. And you can actually wind up losing a lot of money along the way. And you could also wind up losing your job if you don't take care of your licensing. So really, really important. And I would also recommend for those who are still in school, don't assume that your school is taking care of your licensing and all of your paperwork, because chances are they are not. And I know that is frequently a misconception that people have. They think that the school is sort of taking care of everything for them, when in actuality, the school is not taking care of any of those things, and they wind up with a very rude awakening later on.
I would also add, anybody who is planning on going into teaching in this environment should get certified in two subjects. I think everybody should try to get certified in a content area and in special education. I think that's the advice I've been giving my former students who decided to go into teaching. It just will make you far more marketable at a time where it's very difficult to get hired.
I agree with that, with one caveat. Make sure that that is the population, the special education population that you want to work with for 30 years, because it's one of those be careful what you wish for situations. If you just get the special education license so you can get a job, then you wind up spending your career working with special education students. And if that's not your passion, because that is, there are tremendous challenges that are involved in working with any demographic of student, but certainly with special education. If that's not your passion, then I would advise against that. But if you are willing to and feel up to the challenge of working with any and all types of students of all ability levels, then by all means go for that second certification.
Yeah, I mean, like, one of my former students from a while back was last man in the social studies department, and he was really worried that he was going to lose his job. And by going back and getting his special ed certification, they were able to keep him because they could split him, one class in special education department, 4 classes in social studies. So I think that's just why, whether it's on the elementary level or on the high school level, I just think you're right. I mean, I would hope nobody would be hired who didn't care about, helping kids no matter what the situation was. Those are not people we want in education anyway.
Of course. No, I totally understand. However, public schools are now housing students of greater and greater levels of disabilities, whereas in the past they used to have different programs, maybe BOCES level programs or district level programs, depending on where you work, for people who were more specializing in that particular demographic of student. But yeah, I'm just saying that it's not the way schools were broken up 20, 30 years ago, where students with special needs were, simply students who perhaps struggled academically. Now you have many more emotional needs. You have students with autism. That's all I'm saying. There are just different ranges, and I think the special needs can, depending on what school you're in, run fairly deep. So you really need to be a person who's willing and able and ready to tackle that type of student versus someone who wants to come in and thinks they're going to come in and teach AP level classes when in fact they'll wind up spending their career doing something else. But so now let's say you've graduated, you have your license, or rather you haven't graduated yet, and you're poised to graduate, but you're going to complete your student teaching in a particular school. So what advice would you give young people who are or people who are transitioning from one career to another who are in the student teaching phase?
I would definitely start by saying, understand this is going to be the most grueling time you've had in college. If you do student teaching correctly and you approach it the right way, it's extremely hard work. And I've seen many student teachers come through, in my school, and some of them are incredible. You can tell the talent is there. I think some of them, it's a little bit of a rude awakening of how difficult the job may be. So initially, you really have to be working every night to put together lessons that not only you're working on the skills of lesson planning, but also learning the content. Because for a lot of young people, that's a critical component of student teaching as well.
I agree with that. And I would also recommend that when you have some free time during the day, befriend some members of the department that you're working in and see if you can get in to visit and observe their classroom, because you may spend a week or so just getting acclimated into with your cooperating teacher, but that's only one style. So I would recommend kind of having exposure to as many different styles as you can and try to get as much experience from that and have that inform what you're doing in your classroom once you get a chance to take over.
How do you feel about, and I'm not sure if this is a state regulation, but how do you feel about student teachers working both on the junior high and the senior high level?
Well, I think for anyone who's has a secondary license from 7 through 12, that's a great idea, because I mean it is a world of difference between a 7th grade classroom and an 11th grade classroom in terms of what the students are doing and where they are developmentally. So I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Do you feel otherwise?
Well, I don't know. Did you do that when you were student teaching?
Well, I guess I can make a confession here. I started off in the city and I wound up getting a job before I completed my student teacher requirement, so they waived it.
Oh, okay. See, because my student teaching, I only did 10th grade, and I think I also student taught in the city. My concern is that by splitting it, they're not really getting a full experience with one group of students and going through everything
Right.
that takes place in the semester.
Right.
Now, I go, the city's different, as you know, because they change schedules halfway through the year. At least they used to.
Right.
And what I liked about it is basically those students were mine. They from day one
Hmm.
until the end. I did every step of the report card process. I did every step of parent conferences. I did every step of midterm, final.
Right.
And I think that's the best experience. I feel like when you're breaking it up into only 10 weeks, I don't know how well you really, you know, accustom yourself to the experience. I understand what you're saying about working with junior and senior high kids. I think that's obviously important, but I think it's more important to get the full experience of what an entire class load is going to look like.
I can't argue with that at all. I guess it really just becomes a matter of how much time is available to do this, right? I guess ideally, then, based on what you're saying, if you could do a semester on one level and then another entire semester on another level, then you would get all of that experience. But obviously, most schools don't work that way. Most schools only have one semester for student teaching, and I'm talking about the college level now. And so you're either going to have to split that time or lose out on whatever that other experience would have been like.
I mean, I'm very fortunate because I really think my student teaching experience prepared me immensely for the job. I had a wonderful cooperating teacher, sadly just passed away last year, but he was an incredible man. And 25 years later, when I was running into him at basketball games, he was still talking about how much fun, because I was the first person he ever took as a student teacher.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
Well, I'm definitely envious that you had that experience. I didn't have that. It was more trial by fire for me, and I wish I had that a little bit more. I probably could have gotten gotten on the road a little bit faster if I had worked out some of the kinks in a student teaching environment. But the final advice that I would give to any student teacher is whether you realize it or not, you are on a 10-week job interview. And I can say this, administratively. We are always looking for talented people, whether it be for our own schools or to help out our colleagues who are constantly in contact with one another through listservs and association meetings and so on. Everyone's always looking for somebody at some point. So you are on a 10-week interview. So conduct yourself accordingly. And to me, the key part of that is make sure that when you feel you're ready, that you go to the chairperson, you go to the assistant principal, you go to the principal, you invite everybody in to see you. Now, I know what you're thinking. If it goes badly, then haven't I just destroyed my chances? Well, depends on how badly it went. But if they see talent, if they see promise, that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for polish at that point. They're looking for promise and potential. So, but if they don't see you, then they won't know. They won't ever know. And eventually you're going to have to put it on the line anyway. So you may as well do it in the environment in which you're comfortable. You've worked with those kids for a while. You've worked with your cooperating teacher for a while, as opposed to going in cold and doing a classroom lesson for modeling purposes for an interview where you don't know the kids, you don't know the environment, and you're even worse off. So I would definitely 100% make sure that you invite people in when you feel you're ready, when you have a really good lesson that you're confident in, and put it all on the line there, because that will open up many more doors than simply sending out your resume in response to an ad.
Yeah, I agree. And you never know who in your department, has a brother who is a principal or a coach who's friends with somebody from another
Hmm.
school. That is how it all works out. So I totally agree with you on that.
Thank you. So now, speaking of the interview process, so what advice would you give someone who's preparing and maybe going in for his or her first interview?
That's a tough one because I haven't interviewed for a teaching job in so long, and I did enjoy the questions, some of them that were asked. But I think you have to be familiar very much with the school you're interviewing at first. I think showing that you put the time in to knowing about the demographics of the school, any recent changes in the school, um, I think that would be very, very helpful.
I would also offer this. Sometimes you'll get great questions that will allow you to really share who you are and what you're about. And sometimes you'll get some run of the mill questions that really don't offer you that opportunity. So you have to try to find opportunities to work that in, even if the question doesn't lend itself. Almost like a really good politician can work in his or her talking points, even though the question was about A, but they're going to talk about X, and they figure out a way to work it in. I wouldn't ignore A and only talk about X, because then that won't go over well. But if you could somehow massage it so you can answer the question that's asked, plus work in the things that are your strengths, things that you feel that you bring to the table, that's very valuable. I would also advise that you want to be the candidate of that's going to be the future of that school. So talk about the ideas or talk about the innovative things that you'd like to do, even if you haven't done them yet, because they want to reflect upon you, um, or through you, what the school could look like if they bring you in. What will they be getting? Will they be getting just another teacher who is going to be out at 3 o'clock, or another teacher who's just going to do what is asked and not anymore? Or are you going to be the person who's going to be inventive and innovative and creative, and add value and add different types of vision to the school, and impact the students in a positive way? So make sure you try to harp on that whenever possible and work it in whenever you can, because they may not open up that door for you during the interview.
Do you recommend them bringing in a portfolio of work that they've done, either as a student teacher or outside of school, or is that not necessary?
Only if it's great. Only if it's great. I've sat in on many interviews, and a lot of people bring in these very thick binders, and they wind up not even opening them at any point during the
Right.
interview. And very often I'll be the one who asks at the end, "Well, I see you brought your binder. Is there anything in there that you'd like to share?" And if they turn to something and open it up and it's wonderful and it's creative, then that's great. If they open up to something that is very standard, very basic, that is that works against them. So I would say only if it's something great, only if it's something really worth seeing. Um, just because you created a PowerPoint for a lesson doesn't mean it's a great PowerPoint. If you've done something really innovative, I would say absolutely, but otherwise, less is more.
Once the interview is over, how do you think candidates should handle that?
I think it's always good form to send a follow up, and emails, I guess, probably the easiest thing to do nowadays. Just a follow up email. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and it was great to meet with you. I look forward to hearing from you soon. And nothing more than that, but just as a courtesy, people do like that. And I know it's old school, but sometimes those things really still work out.
Right. Well, we're at that time, right, where there's going to be interviews.
That's right.
All over the country for the next batch of teachers. So hopefully some people will learn a little bit from this.
I hope so too. And that wraps up this mini lesson or mini episode. So stay tuned for the next one. We should have a series of these coming up in subsequent weeks. So thank you very much, Nick. And until next time.
Take care, Mark.